Are you in that 3 to 6 month postpartum window where you're thinking, why does this suddenly feel harder than the newborn stage? Because in the beginning, everything was new. Your hormones were helping you. It was exhausting, yes, but a little exciting too, right? And now those hormones have settled down, your body's gotten quieter, and on top of that, you are just stuck in the grind. Baby is bigger, baby is louder, baby is more distractible, maybe you're back to work, maybe you're not, maybe you're just in the deep daily grind of motherhood with a baby who does not nap consistently, in a body that feels different, and a sneaking suspicion that something might be going weird with your milk supply. There's one thought that I see consistently creeping in for moms, and it's this: my baby's bigger, I need more milk, my supply is low. Here's something that is wildly calming once it clicks. If your baby is on 100% breast milk, they do not need more and more milk every single month after the newborn phase. Most breastfed babies land somewhere between 25 and 30 ounces a day from about 4 weeks on, and that range barely moves no matter how big your baby gets. But what about growth spurts, or the 4-month sleep regression, or the baby suddenly eating constantly and not sleeping? These are great questions, and those are exactly what we're going to talk about in this video today. We're going to walk you through everything that's happening with your milk supply between months 3 and 6, what the 4-month sleep regression actually does to your supply, and why it feels like you might need more milk when you actually probably don't, and what your baby's behavior is really telling you. There's also one thing that quietly causes more supply confusion at this stage than anything else, and that's what we're going to talk about. Quick note before we get into it. Our team here at New Little Life are all IBCLCs, but we do specialize in pumping. And after you've watched this video, if you want to go even deeper, or if you're struggling with anything that we talk about today, there is a free milk supply masterclass linked in the description that will help go more in depth for you. All right, let's get into it. Let's start with the thing that changes everything once you know about it. With formula, volumes typically increase steadily as baby grows. Bigger baby, bigger bottles, more ounces. So it makes total sense that your brain assumes breast milk works the same way. And honestly, I even see caregivers and sometimes pediatricians even who are more accustomed to the formula's route of milk. But breast milk is different. Breast milk composition changes as your baby grows. It adapts to meet their needs without needing to scale up the volume in the same way. So instead of climbing and climbing, total daily intake tends to land in a fairly steady range for many babies, somewhere around that 25 to 30 ounces a day, and that stays roughly the same until they start weaning. Some babies are just a little under that, some are just a little over, but that range is genuinely useful as an anchor, because the moment you believe that your baby needs 40 ounces a day, you start trying to produce like someone who needs to make 40 ounces a day. And that is where things start to go sideways. Low supply, sometimes oversupply, burnout, chasing a number that was never really the target in the first place. So if milk needs are not climbing the way baby's size is, why does it feel like they should be? There are 3 reasons, and the first one is the one I wish every single mom knew was coming. Somewhere around 12 to 16 weeks postpartum, something happens that trips up almost every single parent that I've ever worked with, and it has nothing to do with your actual milk supply. Your baby hits a massive developmental leap. Their brain is reorganizing, sleep cycles are changing, they're becoming aware of the world in a completely new way. And the result looks like this. Babies who used to sleep in longer stretches are suddenly waking up constantly, sometimes even every 90 minutes. It was just wild, especially if they've been sleeping 4, 5, 6 hours, maybe even before that. A baby who had any kind of predictable feeding pattern is now cluster feeding, wanting to eat all the time and still seeming unsatisfied. Baby is fussier, clingier, fighting naps, fighting feeds, fighting everything. You're getting less sleep than you were in the newborn phase. And on top of all of that, your breast feels softer, less full, less obvious than it did a month ago. Every single signal your body and your baby are sending you in this moment says you don't have enough milk. Your supply is low. But here's what's actually happening. This is a developmental event, not a supply event. Your baby needs the comfort of frequent feeding right now. They're going through something enormous, neurologically and physically, and feeding is how they regulate. The increased demand is real. Okay, I want to say that, but it is only temporary. And here's the thing that saves your sanity if you can hold on to it. This stage is typically 7 to 14 days. this random sleep regression nonsense usually doesn't last longer than 2 weeks, which I get in the middle of it can feel like a really long time. I've been there many times. It feels like forever because there are so many different things stacked on top of each other. A few days of cluster feeding, a few days of fighting the breast, a few days of waking every hour, and each one kind of feels like a new problem, and you feel like you're losing control of this baby that you have tried to kind of get on some resemblance of a system, right? But it passes. Your baby comes back, your sleep comes back, and your supply can handle this if you can manage it well. The milk supply risk here is not the regression itself. The supply risk is what you do in response to it. So if you panic and you start removing a lot of extra milk on top of what your baby is already demanding, you may be adding in way more work and stress than you already have at a chaotic time. You might also be significantly overshooting what your supply actually needs to be, right? And if you do not remove enough milk because your baby is fighting feeds, you're both exhausted, supply can dip. So the 4-month regression is genuinely one of the most important moments to understand because your response to it shapes your supply for weeks after. Beyond the sleep regression during this 3 to 6 month window, there are 3 more reasons this stage kind of constantly fools moms into thinking that their supply needs to be bigger than it does. First, baby is visibly bigger, so your brain assumes they need more, like we talked about. This is the most natural assumption in the world, and it's usually wrong for the reasons we just covered. Your baby's growth at this stage is not primarily being fueled by constant increasing milk volume. It's being fueled by what is already in that fairly steady daily amount, which changes as your baby develops. Bigger baby does not equal bigger appetite in the way you feel like it should. Now, if you're using formula in any combination, that looks a little different. But if you're on breast milk, that number just doesn't change. Second thing here is that your supply is regulated, and that changes how everything feels. If you watched our video on the 1 to 3 month regulation window, you already knew this was coming, but by now those early birth hormones are long gone. Your supply runs almost entirely on supply and demand. You also usually have less leaking here, softer breasts, and none of those big, obvious hormone-driven signals. A quieter body is not mean that your supply is low. It doesn't mean that you're less capable. It just requires you to actually understand what you're doing instead of riding that hormonal wave. So you can absolutely still adjust your supply at this stage. You can increase it, maintain it, fine-tune it. We help moms do that all the time, but it does take intention and skill in a way that the early weeks didn't. And third here, pumping usually enters the picture in a bigger way, and it is a completely different skill set. If you're exclusively breastfeeding, you've probably already learned by now that this video may not be exactly what you're looking for. We really specialize in moms who are pumping at least a little bit, from a little to a lot. And I know not every mom is headed back to work at this point, but if you are, this is where things can get really wild. If you were not pumping much before, this is often where you start trusting your milk supply more 50-50 with a robot instead of a baby. Often in a stressful new environment on a schedule that may not match your body at all. And even if you're not returning to work, if bottles are becoming a more regular part of your day, pumping output starts mattering in a way that it didn't before. If your pumping output looks lower than you expected, that does not automatically mean that your supply is the problem. Okay, it might mean that the tool or the technique or the environment is the variable. This really is our area of expertise, by the way, so make sure you're subscribed if you are using a pump in any way to manage your milk supply. 3 reasons here: bigger baby, quieter regulated body, and pumping stepping into a bigger role. Any one of these can make it feel like you need more milk, but there is a 4th thing, and this is the one that causes more confusion at this stage than all the others combined. Here is something I really want you to sit with because it changes how you see everything else in this stage. You cannot overfeed a baby at the breast. Babies control the flow there. They pause, they stop, they regulate themselves. It's built into the biological design. But you can absolutely overfeed a baby with breast milk in a bottle. And I see this constantly. Here's how it happens. And it's nobody's fault. Bottle flow is often faster than the breast, and babies can finish a bottle quickly and still want to suck or still think they're hungry because they ate it so fast and their brain hasn't caught up with that signal yet. Sucking is also comforting. It's not just nutritive. At the breast, they can suck in, we call it non-nutritive sucking, when they're just sucking for comfort. If you do that on a bottle, you're still going to get milk, All right, so these are two totally different feeding mechanisms. Often I see caregivers who are looking at a baby still sucking after a bottle is empty and thinking they're still hungry and offers more. And then bottle volumes start to creep up. 5 ounces becomes 6, maybe 6 becomes 7 just in case, which by the way is a huge bottle of breast milk. They're often eating so fast, they don't even realize they're full until they're over full, which has that ever happened to you? I know Thanksgiving is a common time when that happens, where you're like, wow, I ate too much and I didn't even know. Same with your baby. And now your baby is taking in more milk especially during times of separation, than they would ever take directly at the breast, which means the amount you're being asked to pump, or the amount that seems like you need, has quietly become bigger than your actual baby's needs. Not because your supply is behind, because the target moved. Here's what I see moms doing, and you are responding in the way that anyone would. I get it. You're adding in a pumping session. Maybe you try power pumping. Maybe you buy a new pump or a supplement. Maybe you're working harder and harder to hit that number that was never actually really your baby's real need in the first place. It was inflated and created by how bottles were being given. This is why paced feeding matters so much. And it's something that we go deep on inside of our full pumping efficiently system, which is our full course bundle for anyone who's pumping. Because it's not just a feeding technique, it's a supply management technique. Intake drives demand. Demand drives supply. And if a baby is taking more through bottles than they actually need, your body either has to overproduce to keep up, or you will feel perpetually behind chasing a moving target. And neither one is where you want to be. Let me tell you about a mom who went back to work at 4 months postpartum. She'd been mostly breastfeeding, pumping occasionally. Her baby was thriving. Then daycare started, and daycare requested 5-ounce bottles, then 6, then maybe 10. Just like an extra couple ounces just in case. And she watched her pump output at work and thought, I cannot keep up with this. Because if you think about it, if her baby's taking a 5 or 6 ounce bottle every 3 hours, she's got to pump 6 ounces, which is more than what I typically see moms pumping in one session, especially at work. So she actually had to add in an extra one at work and one at night before she went to bed. Then she had to add in power pumping because she still wasn't quite getting enough. And she was building toward a bigger and bigger supply, and she was exhausted. But when we actually looked together at the actual picture, her supply was not the problem. The problem was bottle pace and bottle volume. Her baby was being fed quickly, finishing bottles fast, and still sucking afterward. It was getting topped off whenever they were fussy or crying, and was taking more during the day than they ever would have at the breast. For this mom, it was about 18 to 20 ounces during her 9-hour workday away. It was a lot. And then you got to remember the baby's breastfeeding on top of that and was still feeding at night. So it was just a lot. It was a lot of milk. Once the bottles were adjusted, smaller volumes, she was able to get her caregivers to get on board with some paced feeding. It wasn't perfect, but it was better. Kind of getting everyone aligned, something shifted. She actually all of a sudden didn't need those extra sessions anymore. She didn't need to power pump. She suddenly had enough again without even adjusting her supply or turning her life into a pumping marathon. She told me later the hardest part was not the adjustment itself. It was realizing how close she had come to believing that her body was failing her, when actually the target had quietly moved without anyone noticing. So here's what I'd love for you to take from this video. At 3 to 6 months, this stage is often described as maintain and adapt. Your supply is regulated, quieter, it's less dramatic, it's running on supply and demand instead of those early hormones. Your body is mostly making what's being removed. The goal is not a constant increase, it's consistency, even while everything around you keeps changing. And when it feels like you need more milk, there is a really useful distinction to hold on to. You gotta ask yourself, is this a supply problem or is this a system problem? A real supply problem means your body genuinely is not making what your baby needs. And that is absolutely something that can be increased. We do this all the time at this stage, so milk supply can definitely be adjusted in this time frame. If you realize it's a system problem, meaning that the supply is fine, but something around it, whether that's paced bottles, bottle volume, a sleep regression, a pump inefficiency, environment, whatever, if that's creating a gap, it looks exactly like a supply problem from the outside. At 3 to 6 months, it is far more often a system problem than people realize. And those two different scenarios require two completely different responses. Chasing more milk to solve a system problem just means more work, more stress, and often maybe even an oversupply in the end that you didn't actually want. If this season feels like you should have it all figured out by now, you are not behind. Feeding changes because life changes. This whole first year is a series of adaptations, and the 3 to 6 month point is one of the big ones, all right? The relief here is not making more milk. It is knowing what's actually going on so you can respond to the real thing instead of working harder at the wrong thing. If this video made you realize that the problem might not be your supply at all, then it might be a system around it, I'll encourage you to start that free milk supply masterclass. That's probably your best next step. It's designed to help you figure out what's actually going on for your specific situation. It's linked down below. And when you're ready for video number 4 in this series, we're going to head into 6 to 10 months when solids start entering the picture and people become even more confused about what milk supply should look like during that time. Spoiler alert, milk is still doing most of the heavy lifting, and we're going to talk about exactly how to find a balance that works. So that one's up next. Good luck to you. Happy pumping.